There's a word that has appeared in every major FIFA document for decades, a word that sits at the heart of how football governance presents itself to the world. A word that, if you follow the institutional story of this tournament carefully, is looking more threadbare by the day. Unity. FIFA brings the world together. Football unites nations. The World Cup is the ultimate expression of a sport that transcends borders, cultures, and history. That is the language. It has always been the language. And right now, 12 days from the opening ceremony at the Azteca, a remarkable number of European voices, not on the fringes, not from disgruntled pundits, but from official bodies, legal institutions, and the players themselves, are pushing back against FIFA in ways that go well beyond a boycott conversation. They are taking FIFA to regulators. They are filing legal challenges. They are using the word that FIFA and its president hate most in formal institutional contexts: abusive. Not unfair, not disappointing, abusive. That word appears in a formal legal complaint filed with the European Commission by FIFPro Europe in the European leagues. It's a legal term. It carries specific meaning in competition law and has been applied, in writing, to FIFA's conduct around the 2026 World Cup. Today, we're going to go through all of it. The legal complaints, the player welfare cases, the travel disputes, the double standard argument that is gaining credibility across European football, and what all of it means for the tournament 12 days from its opening whistle. Because the question isn't just whether European nations are turning against this World Cup, it's whether they're turning against the structure of football governance itself. And the answer to that question is more complicated and more consequential than the boycott headlines suggest. Let's start with the complaint that has been working its way through Brussels since October 2024, because this is not a new story. It's a slow-moving story that has arrived at its most significant moment just as the tournament begins. FIFPro Europe and the European leagues, collectively representing the players' unions and national leagues across the continent, filed a formal complaint with the European Commission's Directorate General for Competition. The complaint names FIFA. It focuses on the men's international match calendar, and it uses a specific legal framing that FIFA's decision to expand the World Cup to 48 teams in 104 matches, combined with the expansion of the Club World Cup, infringes European Union competition law by placing a governing body in a direct conflict of interest between its role as a regulator and its role as a competition organizer. In plain language, FIFA makes the rules for football and also runs the tournaments that generate FIFA's revenue. And when FIFA changes those tournaments in ways that financially benefit FIFA while harming the leagues, players, and domestic competitions that host the sport the rest of the time, without consulting those stakeholders, without engaging with them, without accepting any form of accountability to them, that is, the complaint argues, an abuse of dominant position. La Liga's statement at the time was direct and unambiguous. FIFA, they said, shows complete disregard for the importance of national championships and the football community in general. FIFA completely neglects the economic damage these decisions inflict on leagues around the world. Leagues were not consulted about any of the changes presented. The Scottish Professional Football League's chief executive said the situation had reached a saturation point, that with the constant addition of international fixtures, it was becoming increasingly challenging to manage domestic competitions, that over the long term, it could harm operations, financial sustainability, and ultimately the quality of the domestic game. That complaint is currently with the European Commission. Its resolution will come after this tournament is over, but its existence, filed, formally submitted, processed, means that the 2026 World Cup is opening under the shadow of a pending European competition law investigation into the organization running it. And then, 3 weeks ago, something happened that moved the legal landscape further still.
On March 16, 2026, exactly 11 weeks before this recording, the European Committee of Social Rights issued a unanimous decision that a complaint filed by the French National Union of Professional Footballers had been declared admissible. The complaint was brought under the European Social Charter. It focuses on the absence of minimum player welfare protections on workload and the disregard for national collective agreements at the international level. The French Players' Union became the first sports organization in history to have a collective complaint under the European Social Charter declared admissible by that committee. That is a landmark, not a protest, not a campaign, a legal landmark, recognized unanimously by a European institution, admissible for full examination. What it means practically is this. The question of whether FIFA's expanded tournament calendar violates players' fundamental labor rights under European law is now formally under examination. The players whose legs are carrying the 2026 World Cup, who will play up to 8 matches in 6 weeks at the end of a club season that was already longer than any previous one, are represented by a union whose case is being heard at the highest level of European labor law. Rodri, the Manchester City midfielder who won the Ballon d'Or last year before tearing his anterior cruciate ligament, an injury many attributed directly to workload, said in August 2024 that players were close to striking over the number of matches they were being asked to play. His injury was the specific human consequence of the abstract argument the lawyers were making. Too many games, too little recovery. A calendar that FIFA expanded for commercial reasons without consulting the people who physically execute it. Here's where things get interesting, because running alongside these formal legal challenges, there is a more immediate European grievance that has received considerably more media attention and rather less sympathy from some quarters. France, the tournament's strongest squad and one of the bookmakers' favorites to win, officially complained to FIFA about their travel schedule. Their group stage sees them play in Foxborough, Massachusetts, then New Jersey, then Philadelphia. For the most expensive squad in international football, with a manager who has been preparing this team for years and a front three that cost more than most national leagues generate annually, that itinerary was described as unexpectedly arduous. Deadspin, covering this story in April, noted with some precision that the cities France were complaining about crossing are the kind of terrain NBA teams knock out in 4 days. The Northeast Corridor of the United States, home to some of the most developed transport infrastructure on the continent, is not the frontier. And the piece made a broader point that deserves to be acknowledged here. France's travel complaint sits in a very different moral category from the FIFA calendar complaint. One is about commercial schedules imposed without consent on leagues and players across an entire continent. The other is about a very rich national team not enjoying its group stage geography. The risk for the European narrative around this tournament is that legitimate institutional grievances and less sympathetic complaints get mixed together in a way that blurs the distinction. When France complains about traveling between Philadelphia and New Jersey at the same moment that the French Players' Union is bringing a landmark European Social Charter case about player welfare, those two stories are not the same story, and conflating them risks undermining the credibility of the more serious one. What makes the broader European turn against FIFA meaningful is precisely that it comes from multiple directions simultaneously. It's not just fan groups, not just politicians, not just former office holders like Sepp Blatter, who backed fan boycotts in January, or Michel Platini, who expressed serious concerns about the tournament's direction. It's players' unions filing legal challenges. It's leagues taking FIFA to European competition regulators. It's a French players' union achieving a landmark in labor rights protection. It's La Liga describing FIFA's behavior as showing complete disregard for football communities.
And it's also the double standard argument, the one that has been building since Russia was excluded from international competition in 2022, and which has received fresh oxygen with the Iran situation. Capital Sports, which reported the story directly from within the institutional football world, described UEFA delegates as being silent when citizens of Algeria, Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Tunisia, Cape Verde, and Iran faced visa discrimination at a World Cup hosted in North America. The same European football bodies that moved with extraordinary speed to exclude Russian football from all competition in 2022, citing player safety and the broader context of conflict, have said almost nothing about the parallel situation facing fans from multiple qualified African and Asian nations who cannot attend this tournament. Whether that silence reflects pragmatism, inconsistency, or something more complex is a genuine debate. But the argument that European football governance applies its principles selectively, harshly in one direction, silently in another, is now being made explicitly, in published form, by people with serious institutional knowledge of how FIFA and UEFA operate. And it's a harder argument to dismiss than a social media campaign. Now let me be honest about what all of this actually means for the football, because it's a question worth asking seriously. The teams are ready, the squads have been named. Mbappe is fit. Lamine Yamal's hamstring is held. De Bruyne is in Belgium's squad. Messi is preparing for his last tournament. Whatever is happening in Brussels and Strasbourg and the corridors of the European Commission, the matches are going to be played. The ball will roll. And nothing that any legal institution decides in the next several months is going to change what happens at MetLife on July 19th. But the institutional rebellion from within European football matters for reasons that go beyond this tournament, because the complaints, the legal challenges, and the formal admissibility rulings are building a case, brick by brick, document by document, that FIFA has been running the world's most popular sport in its own commercial interest without adequate accountability to the players, leagues, fans, and communities that actually constitute that sport. The European Commission complaint about the calendar, the UNFP case under the European Social Charter, the ticket investigation by the New York and New Jersey Attorneys General, the consumer protection complaint filed by Football Supporters Europe and Euro consumers. These are not isolated grievances, they are a pattern, and patterns have a way of producing outcomes that individual complaints don't. FIFA has survived institutional challenges before. It survived the 2015 corruption scandal that toppled much of its leadership and produced 17 indictments. It survived the Qatar controversy. It has shown, across decades, a remarkable institutional resilience. But the current wave of legal challenges is different in one specific way. It's coming from inside European football's own institutions, from the players, the leagues, the unions, rather than from external investigators or political actors. And it's being processed through regulatory bodies that have real power over how sport operates in the world's largest regulated economic bloc. What European football is doing, 12 days before the 2026 World Cup begins, is building the infrastructure for a reckoning that will unfold over years, not weeks. The tournament starts on June 11th, the legal processes continue regardless, and the football world is watching both. I'd be genuinely curious what you think, not about the boycott question, we've moved past that, but about this. Do you think the institutional challenges from European leagues and players will eventually change how FIFA runs the game? Or does football governance always find a way to absorb pressure and carry on unchanged? Leave it in the comments. It's a question worth taking seriously. If this gave you something real to think about, a like helps more than you expect. Subscribe if you want to follow the full story, the football and everything around it, all the way to July 19th. I read everything you leave below. Football has always been bigger than the arguments around it, but those arguments, right now, are about something important: who the game actually belongs to.